Jiho Kim was drinking his coffee when the news alerts began buzzing on phones across Seoul. At first, people thought it was some kind of mistake or prank. Giant ships appearing in Earth's orbit? Impossible. But then the videos started coming, in from space stations and satellites. Jiho nearly dropped his mug when he saw the footage. Massive dark vessels, each one bigger than a small city, had positioned themselves in a perfect formation around Earth. They looked like giant metallic eggs with strange glowing lines running across their surfaces. There were 23 of them in total. The world panicked. "All flights grounded worldwide," announced the TV news anchor, her voice shaking slightly. "Space stations report being cut off from Earth communications. The International Space Council has called an emergency meeting." Jiho's phone rang. It was a government number. "Mr. Kim? This is Director Han from the Foreign Ministry. We need you at the emergency center immediately." Jiho had worked as a diplomat for 15 years, specializing in difficult negotiations. He had a talent for languages and understanding communication patterns, but nothing in his career had prepared him for this. 2 hours later, he sat in a crowded room at the United Earth Council's emergency headquarters in Seoul. Representatives from major governments around the world joined via secure video links. The room was filled with military officers, scientists, and government officials all talking over each other. "Silence, please," shouted Council President Noda. The room quieted. At 0600 hours GMT, 23 alien vessels entered Earth orbit and established positions that effectively block all space travel in or out. They have disabled our satellite communications network and our deep space monitoring capabilities. A general from the Global Defense Force stood up. "We have attempted to make contact using all known methods. They have not responded to any of our transmissions." A scientist raised her hand. "Based on our readings, each ship is approximately 4.7 kilometers in length. Their technology is far beyond anything we possess. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already." President Noda nodded gravely, "Which means they want something else." As if on cue, every screen in the room flickered, then showed the same image. A creature that looked somewhat like a tall, thin human but with gray-blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its mouth was small and circular. "People of Earth," the creature spoke in perfect unaccented English. "I am High Commander Ralks of the Talaxian Armada. Your planet is now under blockade by order of the Talaxian Coalition. You will not attempt space travel. You will not attempt to communicate beyond your atmosphere. You will wait for further instructions." The transmission cut off. The room erupted into chaos again. What do they want? Are they planning to invade? Should we attempt to fight back? Jiho remained quiet, watching the replay of the alien's message on his tablet. Something about the way the alien spoke caught his attention. The choice of words, the rhythm of speech. It reminded him of something. For 3 days, the world waited in fear. Military forces were put on high alert. People bought out grocery stores and hid in their homes. Religious leaders called for prayer and calm. Scientists worked desperately to understand the alien technology. On the 4th day, the alien spoke again. "People of Earth," said High Commander Ralix, "our scientific analysis has determined that your species harbors dangerous evolutionary traits that threaten galactic stability. You have developed too quickly, too aggressively. Your biological and cultural patterns show signs of what we call the disruptor sequence. This cannot be allowed to spread." Jiho sat forward in his chair, listening intently as the alien continued. "You have 2 options. Submit to genetic modification to remove these dangerous traits or face extinction. You have 30 Earth days to decide. Any hostile action will result in immediate punishment." The screens went dark again. In the panic that followed, Jiho was assigned to a special analysis team. Their job was to study every aspect of the alien communications, looking for weaknesses or opportunities. "There's something strange about how they communicate," Jiho told his team. "They're using English, but the structure feels like it follows rules we don't understand." For weeks, Jiho worked nearly around the clock. He moved into a small room at the emergency center, sleeping only a few hours each night. He studied the alien messages endlessly, looking for patterns, clues, anything that might help. One night, alone in his office, Jiho received another transmission. This one wasn't broadcast worldwide. It came directly to his terminal. Human analyst, the message read. You have been observed studying our communications with unusual attention. Your brain patterns suggest potential for understanding. Explain. Your interest. Jiho stared at the screen, heart pounding. They were watching him specifically. How? He took a deep breath and typed a response. I seek to understand your communication patterns to prevent misunderstandings that could lead to conflict. The response came immediately. Misunderstanding is inevitable between biologically incompatible species. Your species communicates inefficiently. Jiho thought carefully before responding. Perhaps, but we have successfully communicated with thousands of different Earth species with very different biologies. Communication differences can be overcome. There was a pause before the next message. A curious claim. Provide evidence. For the next hour, Jiho explained how humans had learned to communicate with animals, how we'd developed technology to bridge communication gaps, and how human cultures with completely different languages had found ways to understand each other. Finally, the alien responded, Your arguments show the dangerous adaptability we have identified. You seek to change natural communication barriers. This disrupts the natural order. Jiho was beginning to understand. The aliens feared human adaptability itself. The next morning, Jiho was introduced to Captain Sumin Park of the Korean Space Force. She was tall with short black hair and a serious expression. Mr. Kim, I understand you've had direct communication with the aliens, she said. Yes, though I'm not sure how much progress I made. My technical specialist and I have been monitoring their ships, Sumin explained. We've noticed something interesting in their communication patterns. She introduced him to Taewon Lee, a young man with bright eyes and nervous energy. Taewon pulled up a series of diagrams on his tablet. The aliens use a strange rhythm when they communicate, Taewon explained. Not just in their speech, but in their digital transmissions, too. There's a pattern to it, almost like music or code. Jiho's eyes widened as he studied the patterns. This reminds me of something. What? Sumin asked. Before Jiho could answer, alarms blared throughout the building. Everyone rushed to the main hall where the screen showed a new development. 5 smaller alien ships had detached from the main vessels and were descending into Earth's atmosphere. They're positioning themselves above major cities, someone shouted. Seoul, New York, Lagos, Sydney, Moscow. President Noda called for calm. We still have 26 days before their deadline. This may just be a show of force. As the room argued about how to respond, Jiho stood quietly, his mind racing. The patterns in the alien communication, the rhythmic structure of their messages, the way they emphasized certain sounds. Suddenly he knew what it reminded him of. Knocker, he whispered. What? Sumin asked, standing beside him. I need to speak to the council immediately, Jiho said. I think I know how to communicate with them. The blockade of Earth had begun, but Jiho Kim had just found the first key to humanity's survival. 3 months into the blockade, Earth was changing. The initial panic had settled into a grim routine. Food was now carefully rationed. Electricity was limited to a few hours each day. The alien ships remained in orbit, silent and watchful. Jiho sat in a small underground room with Sumin and Taewon. The walls were covered with printouts of alien communication patterns and strange diagrams. Empty coffee cups littered the table. Play it again, Jiho said, rubbing his tired eyes. Taewon pressed a button on his computer. The room filled with the sound of the latest alien message, a series of clicks, hums, and strange pauses. There, Jiho pointed. That pattern repeats in all their messages. Sumin leaned forward. What does it mean? I think it's a formal structure, Jiho explained, like how old letters always began with Dear Sir and ended with Sincerely. But it's more than that. It's almost like what? Taewon asked. Jiho hesitated. Like knocker patterns. You've mentioned this knocker thing before, Sumin said. What exactly is it? Jiho stood up and walked to a clear space on the wall. Knocker is an old game. Very rare now. My grandfather taught me. He raised his hand and knocked on the wall in a complex pattern. Short taps, long pauses, double knocks, varying in speed and strength. It started centuries ago as a way for miners to communicate. Underground, Jiho continued. It evolved into a competitive sport in some parts of Korea. Players create patterns that follow strict rules about rhythm, complexity, and meaning. And you think the aliens communicate like this? Sumin looked skeptical. Not exactly the same, but similar principles, Jiho said. Their language seems to have formal patterns that must be followed precisely. It's about respect and tradition. Taewon's eyes widened. Like a challenge? Jiho nodded slowly. Yes, I think their whole culture might be based on formal challenges and responses. Their first message wasn't just a threat, it was a challenge. But we didn't respond correctly. So what do we do? Sumin asked. We need to issue our own challenge following their rules, Jiho said. And I think it needs to be delivered in person. The room fell silent. That's impossible, Sumin finally said. We can't get past the blockade. Taewon shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Actually, I might have a way. Both Jiho and Sumin turned to look at him. I've been working on something, Taewon admitted. A small stealth craft. It uses technology, based on what we've learned from monitoring the alien ships. In theory, it could slip through their detection systems. In theory? Sumin raised an eyebrow. It's never been tested against alien technology, Taewon said. But my calculations suggest it would work. Even if it does work, Sumin said. Who would fly it? Who would face these aliens directly? I will, Jiho said quietly. Sumin stared at him. You're not a pilot. The ship can fly itself, Taewon explained. It just needs someone to operate the basic controls. And someone who understands knocker, Jiho added. Sumin shook her head. We should take this to the council. This is too big for us to decide. The council won't approve, Jiho said. They're too scared. They'll keep trying to negotiate through normal channels, but that's not working. For good reason. Sumin stood up angrily. This is suicide. Jiho looked her directly in the eyes. If we do nothing, billions will die. The aliens gave us 3 months to decide, and that time is almost up. They want us to submit to genetic modification, to change what makes us human. The 3 fell silent, the weight of the situation heavy in the small room. I'll need 3 days to prepare the ship, Taewon finally said. Sumin looked between them, then sighed. Fine, but we do this properly. I'll handle the security clearances to get you to the launch site. Later that night, Jiho and Sumin stood on the roof of the building, looking up at the stars. The massive alien ships were visible as dark shapes blocking out sections of the night sky. Why you? Sumin asked softly. Why not send someone with military training? Jiho took a deep breath. There's something I haven't told you or the council. He paused. I wasn't just a casual knocker player. I was a champion. I competed internationally. Before I became a diplomat, Sumin turned to face him. Why keep that secret? Because knocker isn't just a game to me, Jiho said. It was my life. My grandfather was a master and he trained me from childhood. But in my last championship match, something happened. What? I froze. Couldn't remember the pattern. Lost. Everything. Jiho's voice was tight. I gave it up after that, never knocked again, became a diplomat instead. Sumin was quiet for a moment. So this is about redemption? No. Jiho shook his head. It's about using the one skill I have that might save us all. 3 days later, Jiho stood in a hidden underground hangar, staring at Taewon's creation. The ship was small, barely big enough for one person. Its surface was black and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It doesn't look like much, Taewon admitted, but it has everything you'll need. Auto-navigation system, basic life support, and a communication device calibrated to transmit knocker patterns on frequencies the aliens can detect. Su-min handed Ji-ho a small device. This is connected to our systems. Once you're inside their ship, if you get that far, we'll be able to see and hear everything through this. Ji-ho nodded, putting the device in his pocket. The plan is simple, Taewon explained. The ship will take you close to the main alien vessel. When they detect you, instead of trying to run or fight, you transmit the knocker pattern we developed. If you're right about their culture, they should respond according to their traditions. And if I'm wrong? Ji-ho asked. Taewon and Su-min exchanged glances. Then we lose nothing. We weren't about to lose anyway, Su-min said grimly. As Ji-ho prepared to board the small craft, Su-min grabbed his arm. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Ji-ho smiled slightly. Because sometimes the only way to win is to change the game. He paused. And because I understand what it means to follow rules so strict they become a prison. I think the aliens are trapped by their own traditions. Maybe I can show them another way. With those words, Ji-ho entered the small ship. The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss. The control panel lit up with soft blue lights. Launch sequence initiated, said the ship's computer voice, as the hangar doors above slowly opened, revealing a patch of night sky. Ji-ho flexed his fingers. It had been years since he had performed a formal knocker pattern. He wondered if he still had the touch. The ship rose silently into the air. On the screen before him, Ji-ho could see the massive alien vessel growing larger. He was heading straight for the heart of the blockade, armed with nothing but an ancient rhythm game and a desperate hope. Behind him, Earth grew smaller, a blue marble wrapped in alien shadows. The small ship moved silently through space. Ji-ho watched as Earth became smaller behind him. The blue planet looked peaceful from here, but he knew better. Down there, people were afraid, hungry, and losing hope. Approaching alien blockade line, the ship's computer announced. Stealth systems active. Ji-ho took a deep breath. Taewon had explained that the ship's special coating should absorb the aliens' scanning signals. In theory, they wouldn't see him coming. In theory. As the ship moved closer to the alien blockade, Ji-ho's mind drifted back to his past. He remembered his grandfather's hands, old but strong, showing him how to knock properly. It's not just about making noise, his grandfather had said. It's about creating a conversation with your hands. Each knock is a word. Each pause is a thought. Together, they tell a story. Ji-ho had been only 7 years old then, sitting in his grandfather's small house in the mountains. The old man had been a miner in his youth, before mines started using modern communication technology. The miners developed knocker to talk through the rock walls, his grandfather explained. Over time, it became more than just talk. It became art. Ji-ho became good at knocker very quickly. By age 12, he was competing in youth championships. By 18, he was national champion. People called him Golden Hands because his knock patterns were so precise and beautiful. Then came the World Championship final in his 25th year. Ji-ho was favored to win. But when he stepped onto the stage, something strange happened. His mind went blank. He couldn't remember the pattern he had practiced 1,000 times. He froze in front of everyone. After that, Ji-ho never knocked again. He put all his energy into diplomacy instead, using words rather than rhythms to communicate. Alert! The ship's computer interrupted his memories. Alien vessel detected ahead. Ji-ho looked at the screen. The main alien ship was massive, shaped like a giant egg with glowing blue lines running across its dark surface. It was at least 20 times larger than the biggest human spacecraft ever built. Suddenly, red lights flashed inside Ji-ho's ship. Warning! We have been detected. Alien targeting systems activated. Ji-ho's heart raced. This was the moment of truth. If he was wrong about the aliens, he would die here, and Earth would lose its last hope. He moved to the communication panel. Taewon had set it up to transmit knocking sounds on frequencies the aliens could detect. Ji-ho placed his hands on the panel's surface. After 15 years, would he still remember how to knock properly? Jiho closed his eyes and let his hands move. The pattern came back to him naturally, like an old friend returning. Short taps, long pauses, double knocks, soft, then loud. It was the most formal pattern in knocker tradition, a challenge from one master to another. Master to master I come in peace, the pattern said. I challenge you to listen. Jiho finished the pattern and waited. The red lights continued flashing. On the screen he could see smaller ships launching from the alien vessel. They were coming for him. They're not responding, Jiho whispered. He tried again, knocking out a variation of the pattern. Still nothing. The alien ships were getting closer. In moments they would reach him. Jiho closed his eyes again. Maybe he was overthinking this. The simplest knocker patterns were often the most powerful. He knocked 3 times. Paused. Knocked once. Paused longer. Knocked twice. In knocker tradition, this simple pattern meant, I see you, do you see me? Suddenly, the red lights stopped flashing. The alien ship stopped moving. They're scanning us, the computer reported. Jiho held his breath. Then, to his amazement, a sound came through the ship's speakers, a series of taps and pauses, similar to his own pattern but with subtle differences. It was a response. The aliens were knocking back. Jiho quickly analyzed the pattern. It wasn't exactly knocker, but it followed similar rules. The message seemed to say, we see you. Why have you come? With shaking hands, Jiho knocked his reply. To speak truth. To find peace. There was a long pause. Then another pattern came through. Approach main vessel. Follow guide ships. The smaller alien ships changed position, forming a path toward the massive main vessel. Jiho sent a quick message back to Earth. Contact established. They're letting me approach. If you don't hear from me again, tell my sister I love her. He guided his ship along the path created by the alien vessels. As he got closer to the main ship, he could see incredible details. The glowing lines weren't just decoration, they were some kind of energy flowing through the ship's hull. The surface wasn't metal as he'd thought, but something that seemed alive, shifting slightly as if breathing. A section of the main ship opened, revealing a hangar large enough to hold 100 ships like his. Jiho guided his craft inside. When the hangar doors closed behind him, Jiho felt a moment of panic. There was no turning back now. His ship settled onto the hangar floor with a soft thud. Through the window, he could see alien figures approaching. They walked on 2 legs like humans, but were taller and thinner. Their skin was a blue-gray color that seemed to shimmer in the light. Their heads had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and they had no visible ears. Jiho checked the small device Sumin had given him, making sure it was recording everything. Earth needed to see this. Preparing to equalize atmosphere, came a voice in perfect English. Please remain in your vessel until the process is complete. Jiho was surprised. You speak English? We have studied your communications extensively, the voice replied. We can reproduce any Earth language. After a few minutes, there was a soft chime. You may exit your vessel now. Our atmosphere has been adjusted to support human life temporarily. Jiho took a deep breath and opened the ship's door. The air outside smelled strange, like cinnamon and metal mixed together. He stepped carefully onto the alien floor, which felt slightly springy under his feet. The tallest alien stepped forward. I am Senior Commander Dex of the Talaxian Coalition. You have performed the sacred rhythm correctly, which grants you the right of audience. This has never happened with a non-Talaxian before. Jiho bowed slightly. I am Jiho Kim of Earth. I thank you for recognizing the rhythm. How did you learn our ways? Dex asked, the 4 eyes blinking in an unsettling pattern. I didn't, Jiho admitted. But we have similar traditions on Earth. I noticed patterns in your communications that reminded me of our practice called knocker. Dex's eyes widened. The prophecy speaks of this, the rhythm makers who would come from beyond. The other aliens stepped back, making strange gestures with their long fingers. What prophecy? Jiho asked. Dex studied Jiho for a long moment. You will be brought before the High Council. They must hear of this development. As Jiho followed the aliens deeper into the ship, he couldn't help feeling that he had stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple communication method. Whatever this prophecy was, it clearly frightened the aliens, and anything that frightened beings powerful enough to blockade an entire planet was worth learning more about. Jiho followed Commander Dex through the alien ship. The corridors were tall and wide, with smooth walls that gave off a soft blue light. There were no straight lines anywhere. Everything curved and flowed like water. "Your ship is beautiful," Jiho said, trying to break the silence. "It is efficient," Dex replied. "Beauty is not a Talaxian concern." As they walked, Jiho saw other aliens working at stations with strange controls that looked like pools of glowing liquid. They all stopped to stare at him as he passed. Some made quick gestures with their hands, perhaps their version of whispering to each other. "How many Talaxians are on this ship?" Jiho asked. 22,417, Dex answered without hesitation. Jiho tried not to show his surprise. The ship was even larger than he had thought. They entered a large elevator that moved not just up and down but sideways as well. When the doors opened again, they were in a massive circular room. At the center was a raised platform surrounded by 7 tall chairs. In each chair sat an alien wearing elaborate blue robes. These must be the High Council. Around the edges of the room, hundreds of other Talaxians stood watching. "Approach, human," said the alien in the center chair. Unlike the others, this one had markings on its face, swirling patterns that glowed faintly. Jiho walked forward until he stood at the base of the platform. "I am High Commander Ralx of the Talaxian Coalition," the marked alien said. "You have performed the sacred rhythm and earned the right to speak. This is unexpected. Thank you for granting me this audience," Jiho said, bowing slightly. "I have come to discuss the blockade of Earth." "There is nothing to discuss," Ralx said. "Your species has been judged too dangerous to join the galactic community. The blockade will remain until you accept genetic modification." Jiho took a deep breath. "With respect, High Commander, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. Humans may be different from Talaxians, but we are not a threat to you." "You misunderstand," said another council member. "It is not what you are now that concerns us. It is what you will become." Raux nodded. "Our scientists have studied thousands of species across the galaxy. We have identified patterns of evolution that lead to stability and peace. Your species follows none of these patterns. You develop too quickly. You adapt too easily. You change your environment instead of changing yourselves." Jiho was beginning to understand. "And this makes us dangerous?" "Inevitably," Ralix said. "Our oldest writings tell of the rhythm makers who would come from a blue world. They would knock on the door of the stars, and if allowed to enter, they would change everything." "Change can be good," Jiho suggested. "Change brings chaos," Ralix replied firmly. "The Talaxian Coalition has maintained peace for 50,000 years by ensuring stability. Your species threatens that stability." Jiho thought carefully about his next words. His knocking had gotten him this far, but how could he convince these aliens that humans deserved a chance? Suddenly, he had an idea. "High Commander, I wish to issue a formal challenge," Jiho said, standing tall. A murmur ran through the watching crowd. Even the council members looked surprised. "You wish to challenge the council?" Raux asked, leaning forward. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds of the sacred rhythm itself," Jiho said. "If I can prove that humans understand rhythm in ways that Talaxians do not, will you reconsider your judgment of us?" The council members looked at each other. Finally, Raux spoke. "Such a challenge has never been issued by an outsider," the High Commander said. "But the laws of the sacred rhythm must be respected. What form will this challenge take?" "A competition," Jiho said. "Your best rhythm maker against me. If I win, you lift the blockade and open discussions with Earth as equals. If I lose, I will personally help convince Earth's leaders to accept your terms." Back on Earth, Su Min and Taiwan watched the exchange through Jiho's recording device. They had connected it to the main communication system, and now leaders around the world were seeing the aliens for the first time. "What is he doing?" President Noda demanded. "He can't make promises on behalf of Earth." "He's buying us time," Sumin said, "and maybe a chance." On the alien ship, Ralix conferred quietly with the other council members. Finally, the High Commander turned back to Jiho. "We accept your challenge," Ralix announced. "Our champion Xintao will compete against you in the Chamber of Echoes. The competition will begin in 1 hour." Jiho nodded, though his heart was racing. He had no idea what the Chamber of Echoes was, but at least he had bought some time. Younger Talaxian led Jiho to a small room to wait. There was a strange seat that seemed designed for someone with a different body shape, and a wall that rippled like water when Jiho touched it. His communication device beeped. It was Sumin. "Jiho, we can see everything. The whole world is watching." Her voice was excited but worried. "What were you thinking, challenging them like that?" "It was the only way," Jiho replied. "Their whole culture is based on formal challenges and traditions. I had to use their own system." "But can you win?" Taewon's voice came through. "You haven't practiced knocker in 15 years. Jiho sighed. "I don't know. But I do know that they're afraid of us for a reason. There's something about human rhythm that worries them. I need to find out what it is." An hour later, Commander Dex returned. "It is time." Jiho followed him to another part of the ship. They entered a dome-shaped room with walls that looked like black glass. In the center was a circular platform with 2 smaller platforms facing each other. Hundreds of Talaxians had gathered to watch. On one of the small platforms stood a tall alien with silver markings on its arms. "This is Xintao, our champion of the sacred rhythm," Dex explained. "For 50 years, no one has defeated him." Jiho walked to the other platform. The floor beneath his feet seemed to vibrate slightly. "The Chamber of Echoes amplifies and purifies rhythm," Dex said. "It will judge the competition fairly." Xintao bowed slightly to Jiho. "I have studied your transmissions, human. Your rhythms are interesting, but simple. You cannot win." Jiho bowed in return. "We'll see." High Commander Ralk stood and raised a hand. The room fell silent. "This challenge will proceed in 3 rounds," Ralks announced. "First, each competitor will perform a traditional pattern. Second, each will perform an improvisation. Third, they will perform together in harmony." Raux looked at Jiho. "The chamber will judge the technical perfection, emotional depth, and mathematical complexity of each performance. Are you ready, human?" Jiho nodded. "I am ready." "Then let the challenge begin," Raux declared. Xintao stepped forward. He raised his long fingers and began to tap on the platform before him. The sound was amplified throughout the chamber, creating a complex pattern that seemed to come from everywhere at once. His fingers moved with incredible speed and precision, creating rhythms within rhythms. When he finished, the chamber glowed with approval. Now it was Jiho's turn. He stepped forward, remembering everything his grandfather had taught him. He placed his hands on the platform and began to knock. At first, he kept it simple, the basic patterns he had learned as a child. But as his confidence grew, his hands began to move faster, creating more complex rhythms. He closed his eyes, letting the music flow through him. When he finished, the chamber glowed even brighter than it had for Xintao. The Talaxian champion looked surprised. The watching aliens murmured among themselves. The first round was complete, and somehow, against all odds, the human was winning. A shocked silence filled the Chamber of Echoes. No one had expected the human to win the first round. Xintao's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, and what Jiho guessed was surprise. "The second round will begin," announced High Commander Raux. "Improvisation." Xintao stepped forward again. This time his knocking pattern was even more complex. His long fingers moved so fast they became a blur. The sounds echoed around the chamber, building upon each other, creating a rhythm that seemed impossible for one person to produce. Jiho watched carefully. There was something strange about the Talaxians' pattern. It was incredibly precise, but also predictable. Each complex section repeated exactly the same way every time. When Xintao finished, the chamber glowed brightly. The Talaxian audience made gestures of approval. Now it was Jiho's turn again. He stepped forward, feeling nervous but also excited. Improvisation had always been his strength in knocker competitions. For this round, Jiho said, "I will improvise based on sounds I hear in this room." He started with a simple pattern, then began to incorporate the soft breathing sounds of the watching aliens, the faint hum of the ship's engines, even the subtle shifting of feet as people moved. He let his rhythm change and grow, never repeating exactly the same pattern twice. As his hands moved, Jiho had a sudden insight. The Talaxians valued precision and predictability. Their rhythms were incredibly complex but always followed strict mathematical patterns. Human rhythms were different. They changed, adapted, followed emotion rather than just mathematics. That was what the Talaxians feared about humans. Not just that we changed, but how we changed, organically, unpredictably, creatively. When Jiho finished, the chamber glowed even brighter than before. The watching Talaxians made sounds that might have been gasps. "The human wins the second round," announced a council member sounding shocked. High Commander Ralks stood up. "The final round will determine the victor. Harmony. You must create rhythm together, neither leading nor following, but working as one." Jiho and Xintao faced each other across their platforms. This would be the hardest part. How could he create harmony with an alien whose entire approach to rhythm was so different from his own? The Talaxian champion began a pattern. Jiho joined in, trying to complement the alien's rhythm without copying it. At first, their patterns clashed, creating jarring sounds. Xintao seemed to be trying to force Jiho to follow his precise mathematical patterns. Jiho could feel himself struggling. The Talaxian's rhythm was so rigid, so unyielding. How could he find harmony with something that refused to adapt? Then he remembered his grandfather's words. True harmony isn't about everyone playing the same notes. It's about different notes coming together to create something new. Jiho changed his approach. Instead of trying to match Xintao's precision, he began to create patterns that filled the spaces between the Talaxians' knocks. Where Xintao was rigid, Jiho became fluid. Where the alien was mathematical, Jiho became intuitive. Gradually, something amazing happened. Their rhythms began to complement each other. The chamber started to glow with colors Jiho hadn't seen before, purples and greens swirling together. Back on Earth, people watched in awe. Sumin and Taiwan held their breath. The world's best musicians were analyzing the patterns, recording. "Everything. He's doing it," Taiwan whispered. "He's creating harmony with them." But then Jiho noticed something. There was a flaw in the Talaxians' mathematical pattern, a tiny miscalculation that grew more obvious with each repetition. For a being so focused on precision, it was a surprising mistake. Jiho adjusted his rhythm to highlight the flaw, not mockingly, but constructively, showing how it could be corrected. Xintao faltered for a moment, his four eyes widening as he realized what Jiho was doing. Then, to Jiho's amazement, the Talaxian champion changed his pattern, just slightly, to correct the flaw. It was perhaps the first time in Talaxian history that their champion had adapted his rhythm during a performance. When they finished, the Chamber of Echoes exploded with light, brighter than anyone had ever seen. The watching Talaxians made a yaoi sound like singing. High Commander Ralks stood slowly. "The third round is a tie." There was wonder in the alien leader's voice. But in the overall challenge, the human has proven superior. Jiho bowed to Xintao, who returned the gesture with what seemed like respect. "As agreed," Ralks continued, "the blockade will be lifted, but more importantly, I believe we have misunderstood humanity." The High Commander stepped down from the platform and approached Jiho. "Our prophecy speaks of rhythm makers who would bring change," Ralks said. "We feared this change would destroy our way of life. But you have shown us that change and stability can exist together, that different rhythms can create harmony. Jiho nodded. That's what humans do best. We adapt, we change, but we also preserve and protect what matters. Our differences don't have to divide us. Perhaps, Ralk said thoughtfully, this is why the ancient prophecy called you rhythm makers, not rhythm destroyers. You do not break patterns, you create new ones. The council conferred briefly, then Ralks announced, we will send representatives to Earth to begin formal discussions. The blockade ships will withdraw to a respectful distance, and we offer a gift, knowledge of the sacred rhythm, which contains mathematical principles your scientists might find interesting. 3 days later, Jiho stood in the main hall of the United Earth Council. Presidents, prime ministers, and kings from around the world had gathered to hear his report. Sumin and Taiwan stood proudly beside him. The Talaxians have lifted the blockade, Jiho announced. Their ships will remain in our solar system, but only as observers and ambassadors. They have shared technical knowledge that our scientists say could revolutionize our understanding of physics, and all because you knocked on their door, Sumin said with a smile. Jiho nodded. They feared us because we represent change, but in the end, they recognize that change isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. President Noda stepped forward. Mr. Kim, you have saved humanity with nothing but your hands and your courage. The world owes you a debt we can never repay. Jiho shook his head. I didn't save humanity. Humanity saved itself by being exactly what it is, adaptable, creative, and willing to reach out across the stars. 1 month later, Jiho stood on a platform in Seoul. Before him were 20 young Talaxians, their 4 eyes watching his every move with interest. Behind them sat their teachers in Tao, who had asked to learn human rhythms. Today, Jiho said, we'll learn a simple knocker pattern that means friends meeting for the first time. He raised his hands and began to knock. 20 pairs of alien hands, with long blue fingers, raised to copy him. In orbit above, Talaxian, ships floated peacefully alongside new human spacecraft built with shared technology. Engineers from both species worked together, combining Talaxian precision with human creativity. And deep in the data of the sacred rhythm that the Talaxians had shared, human mathematicians were finding patterns that would eventually lead to faster-than-light travel, all hidden in the simple knocking patterns Jiho's grandfather had taught him as a child. Earth was no longer blockaded. The door to the stars had been knocked upon and opened, and it had all started with a human who remembered how to knock.